Welcome to Understanding the Bible with Pastor Stephen. This is Season 3, Episode 18, Psalm 23. So for those of you that are watching the video on my Bunny Preacher channel, I just put a little balloon in there because she likes to play around with them sometimes, and hopefully it'll get her to do something today. But anyways, let's get started. I had promised you guys that even though I don't do New Year's resolutions, that I would be working on Psalm 23, trying to memorize it. So here goes. I'll tell you what I got so far. Psalm 23, a psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. Oh, he got me there on that one. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. I had to look at that part. And then, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. The next verse is, I have to look to get started here. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. So I got about half of it, but let's go ahead and talk about that and the individual verses. So first of all, David was a shepherd prior to becoming the king, and even at the moment that he killed Goliath in that first battle for him. So he knew what it meant to care for sheep, to find pastures and water, to play music for them. You read 1 Samuel 16, and it tells you some of the things that he did there. But he also knew what it meant to see them hurt and to fight for them. So we've got to look at this psalm from the perspective of a shepherd, but understanding that he is calling God the shepherd, the ultimate shepherd, and we are the sheep. So there's a metaphor there that you've got to understand a little bit in regards to how we're supposed to act and then how God acts towards us. And you can see that Jesus even talked about that with the parable of the 100 sheep, the 99 that stayed and the one that went away, and he went and found it. And all through the New Testament, Jesus and his disciples referred to us as sheep. So we've got to find the parallels there and understand it's just a metaphor. You can't use it 100% of the time. But in 1 Samuel 17, verse 34, when David was getting ready to fight Goliath, David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. So my point is, there's still pain as a sheep. Just because you have a shepherd over you doesn't mean that evil isn't going to come in and hurt you, right? Verse 35, And I went out after him and smote him and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard and smote him and slew him. So there's the lion. That's why he's talking about catching him by his beard, right? And he killed the lion pretty much barehanded, just with his staff, probably. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine, that's he's referring to Goliath, shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, that the Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. So in regards to leading me beside still waters and so on, there is danger. And we have to understand that justice will always be done with God. And most of the time that means in the afterlife. Okay, you may not see God's justice in your life for your particular circumstance. Not until you go to heaven, and then true justice awaits. So either God will see us through the trouble, he'll save the sheep, or he'll reward us in heaven when we die. And then, of course, David knew the rod and the staff. He used that. There's two different types of, shepherd's tools for that time period. They were used to fight off the enemies of the sheep, the lion and the bear and the wolf and such. And you have to understand that God as the shepherd is a warrior that will fight for us. Now, the staff was also used to guide the sheep, to keep them on the path to where they needed to go. And sometimes the rod would be used to poke or hit the sheep to knock some sense into them and get them back into line, right? If they're trying to go somewhere. So that's the idea of discipline, that God as the shepherd may need to knock you on the head if you're getting out of line, right? But the staff was also used, it had that hook, the crook on the end of it to grab a small lamb and lift it maybe out of the thorns so the shepherd wouldn't get hurt, or out of a crevice that was low in the ground that it got stuck in or something like that. So there's many uses of these tools, the rod and the staff. When we read Psalm 23, we think of all those metaphors that God as the shepherd can use to help us, to fight for us, to kind of discipline us and spank us when we get out of line, and then to help us, right? There's lots of ways. And of course, God uses angels and other humans to help us. So there's lots of ways that those things happen. But understand in Psalm 23 that it's not just a nice psalm. There's the enemy in 2 verses there. He speaks of the valley of the shadow of death. And that's verse 4. And then we have verse 5, a table in the presence of mine enemies. So the valley of the shadow of death, we need to understand as believers in Jesus that we will face hard times, even deadly times. You might die. You might be martyred. Maybe in the great tribulation, you'll have your head cut off because you refuse to take the mark of the beast. You will be in the valley of the shadow of death. You know, and think of all the things that David did when he was being chased by Saul and having to live in the caves and near death as the enemy comes around him and finds him and such, and he had to fight. So we need to understand that in that time where the enemy is attacking us, we can take comfort in God. See, I remember when I was in training with the Marines, and they told us this Bible verse, "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for I am the meanest mother effer in the valley," is what they would say. And they were training us to be mean, and that we should have no fear. We should be stoic, not let the enemy see, even if we are afraid, that we are bad enough to handle it. We are tough enough. We are mean enough. We will get through it one way or another. And that verse and some of the training that I learned there really stuck with me, that even in the face of fear, you can have courage and move forward through that valley and get through death, the shadow of death, as it's happening all around you in battle, or as a metaphor in your life, whatever you may be going through. But we have to understand that it's not by our power. God is the biggest and baddest one. I mean, for crying out loud, he creates and calms the storms. Remember Jesus, peace be still, and the wind and the rain ceased and the storm just, the waves just stopped. He made the seas. He makes the comets that fly through the air, like through space, and could destroy entire planets. He made the freaking galaxies that whirl around and spin through space. He can handle a few bad angels or a few thugs or demons or humans in your life, right? But do not think that your life is going to be peaceful. You're going to be walking through the valley of the shadow of death. And then you come to the next verse, the table in the presence of my enemies. Remember when David was anointed in 1 Samuel 16? He was anointed as a shepherd boy, and then he went back to being a shepherd. A poor little job, menial task, working with his hands, having to fight off wild animals. And then later for years, a fugitive from King Saul after he had already been anointed. So you got to understand that your enemies may see your anointing from God if you're living righteously and hate you and try to kill you for it, or destroy your career, or cause problems in your life, right? But God still provided for him. He was poor and living in caves, but God kept him alive until the time that God needed him to be king and to lead the nation of Israel. See, God had a purpose in his life. So if you are anointed, if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, God will take care of you in Psalm 23 through the bad times, through the valley of the shadow of death, in front of your enemies. And he'll keep you alive until that time to fulfill your purpose in life. I read a really good book by Lieutenant Kerry H. Cash. If you want to check it out, it's called A Table in the Presence, about him being a chaplain in the Iraq War and how he saw God there. An awesome book if you like stories about war, if you like stories about spiritual revival, if you like stories about miracles. There's so much cool stuff in there that this guy actually saw. And he took, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks leave after serving for a year, went back home to his wife, wrote the book, asked her to take care of getting it published, and then he went back to war for a second term or a second tour. So again, the book is A Table in the Presence by Lieutenant Carey H. Cash. I don't get any, credit for selling it. It's his book, but you can probably find it on Amazon. I don't know. But that is really a good example of surviving through hell with the enemy all around you, shooting at you, literally life or death, right? And God kept him alive. And I just think of that book anytime I quote this verse about a table in the presence of mine enemies, because that's like a real life example besides the King David 4,000 years ago or whatever. But then we come to the end, about God's blessing. And, it says, in the presence of mine enemies, thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. That's the idea of blessing, so much oil that you can't hold it all in your cup. And of course, back in the day, having to cook with oil, it kind of showed prosperity there. And then surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. See, God's blessings could be physical. My cup runneth over. God blesses me in many different ways, and God blesses Christians, humans, in many different ways. Some with power, yes. Some with wealth, although I think that's pretty rare if you read the book of Ecclesiastes. But some people he just blesses with lots of family, like a full life. Sometimes it's friends. You're a friendly person. God gives you that spiritual gift, and you make friends everywhere, and you have friends everywhere. And again, your life is full. You may not have family, but you have friends that become like family. Some people God blesses with spiritual gifts like discernment, and you end up being good in business or being able to get good people around you to help you through life. Some people God blesses with intelligence or good looks even. I mean, you look at King David, and when he was about to be anointed by Samuel, and Samuel's like, well, here's all these tall brothers and they look good. Surely these are going to be the kings. And God's like, no, I don't look on the outward appearance. Take the young one. Well, when David was anointed, I'm guessing he wasn't as good looking as his older brothers. I don't know. Maybe he was ugly. But if you have good looks, you can use that in this world. I mean, I hate to say it, but it opens a lot of doors just by walking in somewhere if you dress nice and you look good, right? So the point is, whatever blessing God has given you, whether it's physical, whether it's spiritual, whether it's relationships or wealth, use it in a godly way. That's the point. And goodness and mercy shall follow you all the days of your life. I want to read another Psalm of David, Psalm 37. He says, fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity, for they shall soon be cut down like the grass and wither as the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. Commit thy way unto the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will bring it to pass. And he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. Rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. You see, you have to have good character many times to be able to claim the promises of God.